Hello everyone, GoldenNova here. The latest legendary duelist set, Duelists of Explosion, is hot off the presses, and it's been a big win for fire lovers everywhere. Like I predicted in Volcanic Explained, it contains more cards for that theme, and Battle and Boxers got some much needed support that puts Glassjaw through its paces. So keep an eye out for the release roundup at the beginning of the year to see how those turned out. But there's one archetype in there we haven't covered yet, and so there's never been a better time to cover this fan favorite. Premiering in the October 2018 core set Soul Fusion, Salamangreat was the ace deck of one Takeru Homura, aka Theodore Hamilton, aka Soul Burner, one of Playmaker's most ardent allies and closest friends. So, without further ado, let's get our kindling together, see how bright our fires can get, then see if there's anyone we can pass the torch off onto. It's time to put some soul into Salamangreat. Today's episode is brought to you by my lovely patrons and the fine people over at Dragon Shield. If you want to protect your cards with the strongest scales on the market that even come with their own lore while supporting the channel, use my affiliate link in the description. So what's the deal with Salamangreat? Well, they're a series of fire attribute Cyberse type monsters that form a very strong value engine. By filling your grave with recyclable cards, Salamangreat looks to set up a board that consistently puts out strong, cheap interaction to wear down your opponent before consolidating them into strong offensive finishers. But that's only half the story. What makes Salamangreat so cool is their specific mechanic, reincarnation summoning. While focused largely on Link monsters, a variety of their special monster types gain additional effects when using a monster of its same name as material for its summon. This can be done either by using it as part of or the entirety of that summon, and while that's usually not possible for Link monsters, we've got a little special card later on that'll help us do it. As for why it's called Salamangreat, after all, a lot of them don't even look like cute lizards, it's actually a pretty literal translation of the original name, which is a portmanteau of great and salamander, which isn't just a real-life reptile, but a mythological creature associated with fire. The kanji itself translates to reincarnation flame beast, which is where their special mechanic comes from. But before we get into all that, we'll need to lay the groundwork, so let's cover our main deck monsters. First up is Salamangreat Mole, a level 1 monster with 0 attack and defense, and during your main phase, if you Link summon to this turn, you can special summon this card from your hand to a zone a Link monster points to. And if you control no monsters, you can banish this card from your grave, then target 5 Salamangreat cards in your grave, shuffle them into the deck, then draw 2 cards. This is like a strange mix of Pot of Avarice and Destiny Hero Celestial, though this one has a much harder condition to meet. Playing out all the cards in your hand to get the most value out of them will naturally lead you to a state where you can use Celestial, but in general, you want to be building up your field. But that same synergy doesn't really exist for Mole, since you kind of want to be establishing your monster lineup. This makes the effect less of an extender and more of an insurance policy, though don't count it out entirely, because it does have that special summon effect from hand to help you Link climb, so it's not totally without merit. It certainly has grounds for consideration as a one-of, but I don't really think I can concentrate more on it. I've got a really huge hankering to play Shovel Knight right about now for some reason. Salamangreat Raccoon is a level 1 monster with 400 attack and 800 defense, and when your Salamangreat monster is targeted for an attack by an opponent's monster, you can send this card from your hand to the grave, then target those 2 monsters that would battle. You gain life points equal to the attack of that opponent's monster, also your targeted monster can't be destroyed by battle that turn. And when your Salamangreat monster destroys an opponent's monster by battle and sends it to the grave, while this card is in your grave, you can add this card to your hand. So it's a neat little battle trick that, while not being actual attack negation, does net you some life points while keeping your monster safe. And if you return the favor by knocking over an opponent's monster, you get Raccoon back. This monster falls into the utility pool, where it doesn't do a lot to further our main game plan, but if battle ever becomes a concern, it's worth taking a look at. I wouldn't call it a garbage card per se, but it's already rooting around in there for snacks, so I kind of have to? Salamangreat of Fire is a level 2 monster with 800 attack and defense, and if this card is normal or special summoned, you can add a level 4 or lower Salamangreat monster from your deck to your hand, except a copy of this card. Also, you can't special summon monsters for the rest of the turn, except fire monsters. And at the start of the damage step, when your Cyberse monster battles, you can banish this card from your grave to destroy that monster you control. Now, that effect might sound a little absurd, but also a little familiar. And that's because this is almost a carbon copy of Achichi Adignister, Flame's representative in the Adignister deck, though this card applies a fire-only restriction, which is no small obstacle since the wider Cyber's pool runs the gamut between all the attributes. So if you do run this, try to summon it on your opponent's turn so you don't have to worry about it. As for the self-destruct effect, that made sense in context with the other Adignister cards, but not necessarily for us. But thankfully, one of our new Link monsters does take advantage of this in a pretty funny way. Though, because it triggers in the damage step, it's always a good way to essentially avoid taking a lot of damage by blowing up your own monster before proceeding to damage calculation, while using up that opponent's monster's attack. And it's also doing the burning draw pose. I love when cards have little references like that. Salamangreat Mirror is a level 2 monster with 800 attack and 600 defense, and if this card is added to your hand except by drawing it for your normal draw, you can reveal this card to special summon it from your hand. And if this card is in your hand, you can discard one other Salamangreat card to special summon this card from your hand. Talk about your animals that just don't want to be held, huh? It's cool to have a search target that can act as quick material, especially because it also checks if it was drawn, just, outside your normal draw. And while the second way to special summon it isn't exactly cost effective, it's nice to have the option, and can even set up your grave if you have the right cards, making this no mere extender. Salamangreat Coyote is a level 3 monster with 1000 attack and 200 defense, and during the end phase, if this card is in the grave because it was sent there as link material that turn, you can activate one of the following effects. You can target a Salamangreat monster in your grave, accept a copy of this card, and special summon it in defense position, or target a Salamangreat card in your graveyard, accept a copy of this card, and add it to the hand. Not a bad way to recycle your material. Generally, you'll want to put the card in hand since most of our monsters don't really have battle-hardened stats, but this can summon your non-link Salamangreat boss monsters to give them another chance at glory. It also works pretty well with Salamangreat of Fire because once you reach the end phase, you aren't really doing much more special summoning, so the search is duty-free. But a word of advice here, don't get too hung up on how a word like this sounds like coyote. I fell into a rabbit hole deep for way too long, and you don't want to waste that much time. Salamangreat Fennec is a level 3 monster with 1600 attack and 200 defense, and if any number of Cyberse monsters you control that were special summoned from the extra deck are destroyed by battle or an opponent's card effect, you can special summon this card from your grave, if it was in there when the monster was destroyed, or from the hand, even if not, but banish it if it leaves the field. And if this card is sent to the grave as material for the link summon of a link 2 or higher Cyberse link monster, you can add a Salamangreat normal spell card from your deck to your hand. Now, keep in mind it has to be sent to the grave as material, so it's not going to trigger that effect if it was special summoned by its effect. But still, having recyclable material that initially gets you a card is pretty choice. Sadly, our normal spell pool is not devoid of value, but is pretty narrow in scope, making this card's usage and application a bit finicky. Salamangreat Foxer is a level 3 monster with 1200 attack and 1000 defense, and if you have 3 or more Salamangreat monsters in your grave, you can send this card from your hand to the grave, then target a Salamangreat Link monster in your grave and a card in your opponent's spell and trap zone to return the targeted monster from your grave to the extra deck, and if you do, destroy the targeted card on the field. And if any number of cards in your opponent's spell and trap zone are destroyed and sent to the grave while this card is in your grave, except during the damage step, you can special summon it in defense position. Talk about your synergistic effects. Well, I would say that if these effects weren't mutually exclusive, so you can't do both in the same turn. But don't worry, we've got a fix for that coming up in just a bit. As it stands now, it's a nice piece of recovery that has a bit of an annoying setup, but since you're getting back a Link monster, odds are the material used to make it in the first place can help you fill out that requirement. So, with all that put together, I'd say that Fire Foxer is a pretty great card. Salamangreat Foxy is a level 3 monster with 1000 attack and 1200 defense, and when this card is normal summoned, you can excavate the top 3 cards of your deck, and if you do, you can add an excavated Salamangreat card to your hand. Also shuffle the rest into the deck. If this card is in your grave and a face-up spell or trap card is on the field, you can discard a Salamangreat card to special summon this card, then you can destroy a face-up spell or trap card on the field. But you can only use one effect of this card per turn, and only once per turn. The parallel to Foxer, its grave effect works beautifully with it to give you 2 monsters on board while dealing with back row. Heck, if you want to fast track it, the card you discard can itself be Foxer, that way you don't have a conflict with its own discard effect. And if you don't have that setup, the chance you'll grab a free card off the top using its normal summon ain't half bad, and goes a bit of a way towards knowing what it's like to play Pearly. With its resource gathering and back row bullying, this makes for one sly fox. Salamangreat Gazelle is a level 3 monster with 1500 attack and 1000 defense, and if a Salamangreat monster is sent to your grave, except a copy of this card, and except during the damage step, you can special summon this card from your hand. And if this card is normal or special summoned, you can send a Salamangreat card from your deck to the grave, except a copy of this card. Folks, you are looking at what has to be one of the strongest enablers in the theme, bar none. Its special summon effect is so easy to trigger it's almost criminal, and it automatically sets up at least 4 different Salamangreats with varied and powerful effects. In fact, it's so powerful that it currently has a reserved seat in the limited section of the TCG FNL list. It seems odd that it's here when so many other one-card starters get to combo off with impunity, but there are thankfully numerous ways to recycle and reuse this card. However, that does make you very vulnerable to banishing effects, which in those instances results in the uncommon Salamangreat Gazelle. Salamangreat Spinny is a level 3 monster with 1000 attack and 1500 defense, and if you control a Salamangreat card, you can discard this card, then target a face-up monster on the field, and it gains 500 attack until the end of the turn. And if you control a Salamangreat monster other than a copy of this card, and this card is in your grave, you can special summon this card, but banish it when it leaves the field. This is going to be one of your prime discard options for Gazelle, because you can instantly call it out of your grave to get a Link 2 or Rank 3, both of which being very good options for us on theme. The discard effect is also pretty good. Normally, it's just an excuse to get it out of hand so we can get more material on board, but sometimes you just need 500 extra attack to get things done. And note that it gives the boost to any monster on the field, it just needs you to control a Salamangreat card to activate, which can be a spell or trap, by the way. So if an off-theme monster needs some help, or you need to mess with your opponent's stat line, keep this in mind. It'll really put a new spin on the game. Salamangreat Weasel is a level 3 tuner monster with 700 attack and 1400 defense, and if you have 2 or more Salamangreat monsters in your grave, you can special summon this card from your hand. And if any number of Salamangreat Ritual, Fusion, Synchro, Xyz, and or Link monsters are special summoned to your field while this card is in your grave, except during the damage step, you can target one other Salamangreat monster in your grave, place this card on the bottom of the deck, and if you do, special summon that monster to your opponent's field, then draw a card. Okay, so that effect sounds a little funky, but hear me out. You've probably already heard a thing or two about how giving your opponent a monster is great for disabling a number of cards. The best Kashtiras can't free summon themselves from the hand, and your opponent can't use cards like Lightning Storm, Infinite Impermanence, or Evenly Matched. But we have a bunch of other applications even in our own deck. One being that we get benefits when monsters are summoned to particular zones, so with this, we can force those activations. And if you wanted to be tricky with Mirage Stalio, we'll get to them in a bit, you can basically bounce that monster right back to your hand, so it's kinda like you got to recover a monster for free. And all of these are dependent of you having gone through some combo lines, and thus, having a few Salamangreats in your grave, so its own summon is basically always online. Which also means you can add some synchros into the mix, expanding what you can do with the deck. And it's got that sweet draw card text on it, who can pass that up? I know it's not quite as straightforward as some extenders are, but half the fun is seeing what kinds of value you can weasel out of it. Salamangreat Falco is a level 4 monster with 1200 attack and 1600 defense, and if this card is sent to the grave, you can target a Salamangreat spell or trap card in your grave and set that target to your field. And if this card is in your grave, you can target a Salamangreat monster you control, except a copy of this card, return that monster to the hand, and if you do, special summon this card. So if you have something with a good on-summon effect, like say Gazelle or Foxy, you can reset it to use it for later. Then when you send Falco to the grave, you get to recover any of your support cards, and we've got some doozies. The real kicker here is that Falco does not banish itself when using any of these effects, so you can literally keep doing this turn after turn with no investment. So you'll want to keep this going as long as possible. And honestly, while I've never played Salamangreat myself, I'm an ardent Seer Dante loop enjoyer, so honestly, I get it. Salamangreat Fowl is a level 4 monster with 1800 attack and 200 defense, and if any number of Salamangreat monsters, except copies of this card, are normal or special summoned to your field except during the damage step, you can special summon this card from your hand. You can send a Salamangreat card from your hand or face-up field to the graveyard, then target a set spell or trap card your opponent controls, and that set card can't be activated this turn. This makes for an interesting extender, giving you a free body to work with while also giving you a way to lock down a back row. While your opponent can chain to this effect in particular, thus prompting them to flip any floodgates or other shenanigans, not everything is going to be that responsive. Hitting a counter trap meant to protect against something else can be devastating. Though if you get lucky and hit the right back row too many times, don't be surprised if your opponents suspect you of foul play. Salamangreat Jack Jaguar is a level 4 monster with 1800 attack and 1200 defense, and it does piercing battle damage. And if you control a Salamangreat Link monster while this card is in your grave, you can target a Salamangreat monster in your grave except a copy of this card, shuffle that target into the deck, and if you do, special summon this card to one of your zones your Salamangreat Link monster points to. Like Falco, this does not cause Jaguar to banish itself, so now you have a free way to reborn a monster and recycle your goodies. A prime candidate are monsters you'll be using as fodder for reincarnation summons, so you have the material you need to keep doing it. But you're free to recycle whatever the heck you want. And since it doesn't specify how it has to be summoned, you can immediately attack with a Jaguar to utilize the piercing damage it has because, reasons, letting you keep the damage going even if your opponent turtles up, which is surprisingly not an animal that you can find in Salamangreat. So much for me thinking that this would be the Crystal Beasts of Brains. Salamangreat Wolvie is a level 4 monster with 1700 attack and 1000 defense, and a monster that was link summoned using this card as material can't be destroyed by battle or card effect for the rest of the turn. If this card is special summoned from the grave, you can target a fire monster in your grave and add it to your hand, and if this card is added from your grave to your hand by an effect, you can reveal this card, then target a fire monster in your grave and add it to your hand. Now remember that this gets back fire monsters, so that opens up a lot of targets, namely a certain hand trap that everyone loves, especially branded players. This works really well with Coyote actually, letting you get a 2-for-1 on the returns. And when used as material, you've got a bit of time to stay safe from destruction effects, as well as battle if that's relevant. It's also kind of thematic to the source material, I guess, but I feel like if you were going to emulate Wolverine, you'd much rather regenerate life points than be indestructible. Salamangreat Zebroid X is a level 4 monster with 1500 attack and 1000 defense, and while this card is in your grave, if a Salamangreat Link monster you control leaves the field because of an opponent's card effect, except during the damage step, you can special summon 2 level 4 Salamangreat monsters from your grave, including this card, but negate their effects, and if you do, immediately after this effect resolves, Xyz summon a Salamangreat Xyz monster using only those 2 monsters. And an Xyz monster that was summoned using this card on the field as material gains this effect. This card gains 300 attack for each material attached to it. Now, the trick here is to get 2 Zebroids into the grave and use both of them for this effect. That way it'll get 600 per material, thus getting it a 1200 point boost when fully kitted out. Though the fun thing is that this applies to any monster using this as material. But do you want to know another fun fact? See, this came out in the TCG in 2020, and is made primarily to work with the Xyz monster, Salamangreat Blaze Dragon, mostly because it's the only rank 4 Salamangreat monster. In the OCG, that had released only slightly before Zebroid, about 4 months prior. But Blaze Dragon was released as part of a special set, so we didn't get it imported until 2022, which means Zebroid X's first effect could not be activated for around 2 years in the TCG. I can't really make a joke that's funnier than that. Could they not have put Blaze Dragon in the import section of Eternity Code? I need to know what happened here. Seriously, if there are any Konami employees watching this, I am genuinely curious about how this came about. Please help me get an interview, I am begging you. Salamangreat Pero is a level 5 monster with 2000 attack and 1000 defense, and when an opponent's monster declares an attack, you can special summon this card from your hand in attack position. If this card is special summoned, you can target a Salamangreat monster in your grave, and this card's attack becomes that target's. You can also attribute this card to gain 2000 life points, a great thing to have in time. Now, since it becomes that monster's attack, not gains it, you'll want to hold off on using this effect until you've loaded a fairly big boss into the grave. But even without, 2000 ain't half bad for what amounts to Factory Defect Battle Fader. Salamangreat Tiger is a level 5 tuner monster with 2000 attack and 500 defense, and you can discard one other Salamangreat card to special summon this card from your hand. And if this card you control is used as synchro material for a fire monster, you can treat it as a non-tuner. And once per turn, you can increase or decrease this card's level by 1. Okay, so this is pretty clearly just a synchro enabler since we've also got one introduced in the support. But I've gotta say, I wish it did more. I know I said we have a pretty robust resource loop, but it doesn't allow for much wiggle room outside of the established lines, so we don't always have the luxury of discarding a spare card. However, what you do get is pretty neat. We aren't limited to just our own synchros, as long as we haven't used Salamangreat of Fire that is, so by upping Tiger by 1 level, it plus any level 4 makes Barone. And would you look at that, Jack Jaguar looks like pretty good material. There are also other ways to get this out onto the field via some special summons, so if ever there comes a time where this can be deployed efficiently, I'd be on the lookout for Salamangreat endboards to get even more fearsome, and it'll be the tiger that has you by the tail. Salamangreat Beat Bison is a level 8 monster with 2800 attack and 1000 defense. Ooh, Mega Monarch stats. And if you have 3 or more Salamangreat monsters in your grave, you can special summon this card from your hand in defense position. You can target Fire Link monsters in your grave up to the number of face-up cards your opponent controls, return them to the extra deck, then you can negate the effects of face-up cards your opponent controls until the end of this turn, up to the number of cards returned. Okay, so despite the huge attack stat, this is more of a utility card. And late game utility at that, since you'll need a few links in grave to get this going. But once you've done that, you've got a card that helps push you through some problem interactions, at which point you can link it off for whatever you want. Its large level even randomly giving you access to full power Blackluster Soldier, Soldier of Chaos. And let me tell you, there's no better way to generate a bad beat story than with Beat Bison. Salamangreat Emerald Eagle is a level 8 ritual monster with 2800 attack and 2000 defense, and can be ritual summoned using the card Rise of the Salamangreat. When ritual summoned using another copy of this card that you control, you can destroy all special summoned monsters your opponent controls. And once per turn, you contribute a Salamangreat Link monster. In this turn, this card gains this effect. At the start of the damage step, if this card battles an opponent's monster, destroy that opponent's monster. And if you do, inflict damage to your opponent equal to that monster's original attack. And since ritual monsters and spells are very closely connected, let's take a quick look at that spell, Rise of the Salamangreat. It can ritual summon any Salamangreat monster, so keep an eye out for another one of those in the future, and it has you tributing monsters from your hand or field until you meet or exceed the level of the monster you want to ritual summon. But if you control a Fire Link monster, you can also use Salamangreat monsters in your grave by shuffling them into the deck. And if this card in its owner's possession is destroyed by an opponent's card effect, you can special summon a Salamangreat Emerald Eagle from your hand, ignoring summoning conditions. Now, this card has some pretty good qualities. When reincarnation summoned, you get to nuke your opponent's special summoned monsters, and if they still have one too big for Eagle, or you just made it normally, you can trade a Fire Link monster to get an effect that's a cross between El Shaddai Construct and Elemental Hero Flame Wingman. The problem is that Eagle just doesn't seem interested in having any part of its design be convenient. For one, its reincarnation only cares about using another copy of this card that you control, which means Rise's alternative way to pay cost won't enable this effect if you have an Eagle in your grave, nor will tributing another copy you have in your hand. So you'll have to ritual summon the first copy while taking advantage of the alternative cost payment to keep it as efficient as possible, then use your recycling effects to get back Rise instead of other key spells and traps, then use it to ritual summon another copy of Eagle that you've stumbled onto. The On Destruction effect can also get the first copy out of your hand if you lack the material, but not only does it rely on your opponent destroying it, so you can't force it with any of your own cards, it also only summons from the hand, so it'll either activate uselessly, or you'll have an Emerald Eagle in hand doing nothing until the right circumstances present themselves. Maybe the next wave of support will find a way to make the ritual summoning aspect of the deck more streamlined, but for now, this Emerald ain't mastering anything. Alright, that does it for the main deck. Now it's time for the extra deck. Going in the proper order, first we have Salamangreat Violet Chimera, a level 8 fusion monster with 2800 attack and 2000 defense, requiring a Salamangreat monster and a Link monster as material. If this card is fusion summoned, you can make this card gain attack equal to half the combined original attack of the materials used to summon it, until the end of this turn. And once per battle, during damage calculation, if this monster battles a monster whose current attack is different from its original attack as a quick effect, you can double this card's attack during damage calculation only. And if this card that was fusion summoned using Salamangreat Violet Chimera as material battles a monster, that monster's attack becomes 0 during damage calculation only. And like with rituals, fusion spells are an integral part of the process, so let's take a quick detour and talk about Fusion of Fire, a normal spell that is always treated as a Salamangreat card, and get ready to see that reminder text a lot. It fusion summons a Salamangreat fusion monster from your extra deck, using monsters from your hand and or either side of the field as fusion material. This makes Violet Chimera one of the most powerful assets to its team, as well as possibly its biggest weakness. Like, right off the bat, this card is going to be huge, easily breaking the 4,000 attack mark. And since Fusion of Fire uses both sides of the field, though let's be real, Super Polymerization was probably the go-to card for this, it also acted as removal if your opponent was on Link monsters. The problem was that Salamangreat once saw a lot of representation, I'm looking at you, TOS format, and people would put a copy of Violet Chimera in their extra deck to break their board using Super Polymerization. And if your opponent did that, then it was basically game over, because if they scooped up your Chimera to make theirs, then it was technically made using a copy of Violet Chimera, thus enabling the 0 attack debuff, and thus the attack doubling buff, which would cause an immediate OTK. Now, if you play Salamangreat today, I'm fairly certain you won't have to worry about it, but whenever it spikes in popularity, be careful, alright? You wouldn't want things with Violet to get violent, right? Salamangreat Burst Griffin is a level 8 synchro monster with 2800 attack and 2000 defense, requiring generic material. If this card is synchro summoned using a Salamangreat Burst Griffin as material, you can activate this effect. During the next standby phase, you can special summon a monster from your grave. It can target a level 7 or lower fire monster in your grave and special summon it, but you're locked into only special summoning fire monsters for the rest of the turn, and if you do this, you reduce this card's level by that monster's original level. So the play sequence here would be to revive the tuner used for this card summon and then just resync for Burst Griffin number 2. Then you use some effect like Jaguar to recycle Burst Griffin 1, then you would proceed to do that every turn to get a free special summon from the grave at the beginning of each turn, breaking that cycle if need be to finish the game. Which is kind of useful in the grind game, and would certainly be outrageous if introduced during the height of its power. Its plotting speed and lack of immediate impact just doesn't resonate with what makes cards playable nowadays. Technically, since Ash is a tuner, it's a prime target for its revival effect to get that cycle going. But the problem is that if you're only running Ash as your tuner, you'd have to give up an activation to normal summon it next to a good level 5 non-tuner, which might be Tiger. All in all, it strangely has a lot of hoops to jump through, and if your card isn't bursting with value, it's hard to recommend. Salamangreat Mirage Stalio was a rank 3 Xyz monster with 2000 attack and 900 defense, requiring any 2 level 3 monsters as material. You can detach a material from this card to special summon a Salamangreat monster from your deck in defense position, but you can't activate the effects of monsters for the rest of the turn except fire monsters. If this Xyz summoned card is sent to the grave as material for the link summon of a Salamangreat monster, you can target a monster on the field and return it to the hand. This is a key part of your setups and why getting Gazelle is imperative. Stick around till later in the video where I describe exactly how this setup happens, but suffice it to say, with proper resource management, Mirage Stalio can continue to pull monsters out of your deck while picking apart your opponent's board. It may not seem like much on the long face of it, but that's all part of the illusion. Salamangreat Blaze Dragon is a rank 4 Xyz monster with 2300 attack and 1200 defense, requiring 2 level 4 monsters as material. If this card would be destroyed by a battle or card effect, you detach a material from it instead. And during the battle phase, if this card has no material as a quick effect, you can special summon from your extra deck a Salamangreat Xyz monster by using this face-up card you control as material, and this is treated as an Xyz summon, transferring its material, even though it really shouldn't have any. And if this card is Xyz summoned using Salamangreat Blaze Dragon as material, you can destroy a monster your opponent controls. So you get 2 shields, and when they're depleted, if you're in battle, you can essentially gain a shield by getting another Blaze Dragon on top of this while blowing up an opponent's monster, which is kind of a neat trick. It gets even better if you use those Zebroids we talked about earlier, because when fully loaded, this gets up to 3500 attack. And if you keep recycling the Yarded Blaze Dragons, you can keep doing this turn after turn until it finally gets overloaded and bites the dust. But, you know, the dragon that blazes twice the Xyz material burns out twice as fast, I suppose. Okay, that does it for all the other extra deck types. Now it's time for our main focus, the links. Salamangreat Mirage is a Link 1 monster with 0 attack, requiring any normal summoned monster with 1000 or less attack as material. As a quick effect, you can tribute this card, then target a monster you control, and it can't be destroyed by your opponent's card effects this turn. And when a normal summoned monster you control is destroyed by battle while this card is in your grave, you can special summon this card. Now, this says it's a Salamangreat card, but it's actually an honorary member of a variety of themes, and exemplifies the kinds of things that Link monsters did to Yu-Gi-Oh! So many old cards that just did not work because they had to send from field to grave triggers that took too long to work could now be folded into Mirage, and presto, instant advantage right out of the extra deck, no bricks required, while going neutral in card economy in the process. Link Karibo had done something similar for level 1 monsters no matter how they hit the board, but Mirage covered a ton of other use cases. In fact, it wasn't just confined to Links. Before Magistus Artemis came out, it was common practice to normal summon Alistair, get Invocation, link it off for Mirage since everyone's favorite magician in terms of resources and fusion summoning had exactly 1000 attack, and now you had all the materials you needed to get Purgatrio, while resetting your loop. It also randomly provided effect destruction protection so that it wasn't just a big gaping hole in your field that invited lethal damage, and could randomly come back if another normal summoned monster got run over in battle. Mirage has got to be one of the most important Link monsters ever printed, and it's not hard to see why, since for a time it was all Mirage. Salamangreat Balinx is a Link 1 monster with 500 attack, requiring any level 4 or lower Cyberse monster as material. If this card is Link summoned, you can add a Salamangreat Sanctuary from your deck to your hand, and if any number of Salamangreat cards you control would be destroyed by a battle or card effect, you can banish this card from your grave instead. Now, for a third time, let's pivot over to a spell card, namely the search target, so we can get a full understanding of what this card gets up to. Salamangreat Sanctuary is a field spell card, and during damage calculation, if your monster battles, you can pay 1000 life points, then target a Link monster you control, and make its attack 0. And if you do, gain life points equal to its original attack. And while that's the source of a very infamous U-Link lock, the more prevalent effect is the first one. If you would Link summon a Salamangreat Link monster, you can use a Salamangreat Link monster you control with the same name as its entire material. So when it comes to performing Reincarnation Link summoning, Sanctuary just lets you cycle over to copy number 2 and get all your bonuses. Thankfully, this applies only once per turn, so you can't just keep doing this over and over again, but it is still very powerful. Not only getting you your additional effects quickly and easily, but also fills your grave with more cards that you can use. And in the context of Balinx, basically any level 4 or lower Salamangreat, which includes basically all the playable ones, gets you access to Sanctuary immediately, while giving any Salamangreat card a one-time protection to destruction removal. Heck, a common play sequence is to Reincarnation Link summon Balinx, even though it doesn't have an additional effect for that, purely to keep another copy engraved to use for that protection. It's just that good. In fact, they come together to really bail you out of a lot of situations. Salamangreat Sunlight Wolf is a Link 2 monster with 1800 attack, requiring any 2 fire effect monsters as material. If any number of monsters are special summoned to the zones this card points to, except during the damage step, you can add a fire monster from your grave to your hand, but for the rest of the turn, you can't normal summon, set, or special summon monsters with the added monster's name. And during your main phase, if you controlled this card that was Link summoned using a copy of Sunlight Wolf as material, you can add a Salamangreat Spell or Trap card from your grave to your hand. This is largely the axis on which your grind game is going to revolve around for most of your rounds. It punishes your opponent for not managing their zones properly, getting you a free monster back, and while it keeps you from summoning the searched monster that turn, its effects can still be used. This means you can, each turn, get back an Ash Blossom, and lock out one of your opponent's searches if you don't need more gas for your plays. And once reincarnated, you can get back one of your support cards each turn, and if you have Falco in the mix, that means you're getting back 2 such cards every turn. And trust me, some of these cards are downright oppressive. Seriously, once this sticks onto the board, the rest of the duel is going to be a bright, sun-shining day. Salamangreat Heatleo was a Link 3 monster with 2300 attack, requiring 2 or more fire effect monsters as material. If Link summoned, you can target a card in your opponent's spell and trap zone and shuffle it into the deck. If Link summoned, you can target a card in your opponent's spell and trap zone and shuffle it into the deck. And once per turn during your main phase, if this card was Link summoned using Salamangreat Heat Leo as material, you can target a face-up monster on the field and a monster in your grave, and the attack of the first target becomes equal to the other target until the end of this turn. Now, maybe a hot take here, but reincarnating this card maybe isn't that important, unless you need to push for game in a strange way. At its base, it's a great way to get rid of a back row before linking up into a boss monster, like the dreaded, and by dreaded I mean based, access code Talker. But keep in mind that the attack modulation isn't restricted to boosting your own monsters. You can target one of your opponent's biggest, beefiest bodies, and an Owl Mirage in your grave to reduce that Guardian to 0. Typical Leo behavior, am I right? Salamangreat Pyro Phoenix is a level 4 monster with 2800 attack, requiring 2 or more fire effect monsters as material. If this card is Link summoned using another copy of itself as material, you can destroy all cards your opponent controls. It can also target a Link monster in your opponent's grave and special summon it to their field. And if any number of Link monsters are special summoned to your opponent's field, you can target one of those monsters and burn your opponent for damage equal to that monster's original attack. So, with Sanctuary active, this can pretty easily become a board wipe, letting you push in for damage, and if your opponent has any Links in grave, you can give them one back to proc that last bit of damage you need for game. This doesn't really have any applications if your opponent isn't playing Links, like Branded for example, but now we have a funny way of triggering this. Weasel! It can give your opponent one of your Links, and burn them for some amount, at which point you can reincarnation Link summon to pop it and go in for more damage. Or you can wait until after you reincarnate so you can revive the Pyro Phoenix to their field, burn them for 28, and then, I don't know, Super Poly for Violet Chimera. While a bit convoluted, this is probably one of your best game enders in theme, which is something you'll have to look out for if you include some of the more recent cards that end up locking you out of the wider Cybers pool. But it does confuse me a bit, why did Pain's Countdown only stop recently? This is a good Pyro card in 2019. Salamangreat Raging Phoenix is a Link 4 monster with 2800 attack, requiring 2 or more fire effect monsters as material. If this card is Link summoned using another copy of itself as material, you can add a Salamangreat card from your deck to your hand. And if any number of face-up fire monsters you control are destroyed by battle or card effect while this card is in the grave, you can target one of them, special summon this card, and if you do, it gains attack equal to that targeted monster. Like with Heat Leo, I don't think the reincarnation effect is that useful. If you've gotten to a Link 4 monster, you probably don't need another card to complete the setup. So the last effect is what we need to look out for, and it's, alright. The big payoff for reincarnation Link summoning this card isn't necessarily the search, but that you have another copy of this in grave. Then, when you swing with this, you have Salamangreat of Fire use its grave effect to pop this, which will then trigger the other Raging Phoenix, summoning itself, targeting this one, and now you have a 5600 point monster to swing with. But as far as available cards go, running this doesn't seem very feasible. Look, I love access code Talker. I think players should be allowed to update Jammer access code until the heat death of the universe, I do. But the fact of the matter is that most decks have to contend with access code as an option even outside of Cyber's lists. Raging Phoenix potentially gives us a 5600 point monster, which is not nothing. I mean, it's 300 bigger than access code is dripped out with the Link 3, but that monster comes with repeatable removal that you can use before going to the battle phase and can attack twice. So the attack difference isn't really an issue. Now, Raging Phoenix is a good alternative if you have to play the new cards that lock you into fires, don't get me wrong, and heaven forbid they actually try to ban the Jammy Code duo. But in a world where neither of those things are true, well, yeah, I think Raging Phoenix has the right idea. I'd be pretty mad too if a 3-year-old card stole my thunder. Alright, that does it for the monsters, now it's time for the spells and traps. Burning Draw is a normal spell card that's always treated as a Salamangreat card. If your opponent controls more monsters than you do, you can target a Link monster your opponent controls and draw cards equal to its Link rating, but you can't normal or special summon monsters the turn you activate this card, except fire monsters. This is another card where the restrictions just outpace any utility it could have provided. Once again, if we end up in a world where fire locking ourselves is viable, and using Weasel to give our opponent a big Link is a clever play, then this turns into a super pot of greed. Heck, if Links ever define a format again, we might not even have to worry about giving our opponent a Link. It's even searchable and recyclable, so you don't have to run more than one copy. But Be that as it may, the use cases are just too narrow and the potential for bricking is higher than it needs to be, so you're gonna need a real burning desire to play this card. Fury of Fire is a normal spell card that is also always treated as a Salamangreat card. It special summons up to 2 Salamangreat monsters from your hand and or grave in defense position, but their effects are negated. Also, for the rest of the turn after this card resolves, you can only special summon from the extra deck once. Now, this is potentially a problem because it locks you out of reincarnation summoning if you don't already have the setup, but thankfully it only applies the restriction for the rest of the turn, so if you need a little value before ending your turn, this can help give you an extra deck monster, or is a potentially powerful Hail Mary during the grind game, folding them into a Sunlight Wolf and getting back into your resource engine. Once again, we have a powerful, searchable one-of, though has much more applications than Burning Draw, so there's nothing to get mad at here. Salamangreat Recurrence is a normal spell card that targets 2 Salamangreat monsters in your grave with different names and adds them to your hand. If this set card is destroyed by a card effect and sent to the grave, you can add a Salamangreat spell or trap card from your deck to your hand. Now, if we had more ways to destroy our own spell and trap cards, I'd be down for this as an incidental way to get our other spell and trap cards that just works as a warrior returning alive +1 as the A plan. But since we don't have that, I'm highly skeptical of that extra utility. Getting back your monsters is pretty nice, though a lot of them have functionality that actually covers that for you, so adding a spell that only does that feels like another way to add redundancy to your deck, but in a bad way where it can end up doing nothing at all, as opposed to stacking up on starters and extenders that almost always do something. Salamangreat has a lot of things that it needs, but this certainly isn't going to recurrence what ails them. Salamangreat Burning Shell is a quick play spell card that special summons a Salamangreat monster from your hand, but negates its effects. Then, immediately after this effect resolves, link summon a Salamangreat Link monster using materials you control, including the summoned monster. This turn, that link summoned monster can't attack or activate its effects. And during your main phase, you can banish this card from your grave, then target a Salamangreat Link monster in your grave and return it to the extra deck. So with the link summoned monster losing its effects for the turn, you're better off using this to set up a reincarnation link summon rather than actually perform it. But once again, this is fulfilling roles that we actually already have covered by our monsters, since we have a lot that summon themselves from the hand for free and that recycle our links. And since you have to perform a link summon with the summoned monster, it can't even be used to summon a big monster for free like Tiger, so you could use it for a synchro summon instead. I know we just got a whole bunch of support, but I don't think this card has found the right shell yet. Salamangreat Charge is a quick play spell card that lets you activate one of 2 effects. You can either target 3 fire monsters that are banished and or in your grave and shuffle 2 into the deck, and if you do, special summon the 3rd, but for the rest of the turn its effects are negated and also it can't attack. Or if you control a fire ritual, fusion, synchro, Xyz, or link monster whose current attack is different from its original attack, target a card on the field and destroy it. So breaking that down, you either get a Recycling Reborn or removal, though that second one has a fair few amount of restrictions tied to it. Not only does it ask you to have the special card type versions of the Salamangreats, but they also have to have had an attack change, and not a lot of them do that inherently. That being said, I think it's better to view Charge as a revival card that doubles as removal in niche situations, especially because as a spell card, Charge can be recycled over and over again to form a true infinite resource loop, even getting back banished Balinxes, who, as we all know, when it comes to our link combos, is the one that leads the charge. But not in this picture. Salamangreat Circle is a quick play spell card that either adds a Salamangreat monster from your deck to your hand, or targets a Salamangreat Link monster you control that was link summoned using a monster with its same name as material, and that Link monster is unaffected by monster effects this turn, except its own. Much like with Charge, the secondary effect isn't always going to be useful, but the first effect is a rota for the theme, essentially acting as 3 extra copies of whatever Salamangreat you need. And as a quick play spell, you can bypass its once per turn restriction by making sure you activate it on your opponent's turn so you can get as much value out of it as possible. Not to mention this allows you to chain to nasty monster effects to keep your reincarnated links safe. This also gives you the interesting option to avoid triggering an opponent's Drolan Lockbird, since you can activate this during the draw phase. It also proves that Salamangreat and Mathmech are basically the same deck because, you know, circle. Salamangreat Transcendence is a quick play spell card that targets a Salamangreat Link monster you control and lets you special summon a Salamangreat Link monster with the same name from your extra deck, using that monster you control as the entire material, and this is treated as a Link summon. So this means we have 2 ways to Reincarnation Link summon now. And because they gave it the quick play card typing, you know what that means. That's right, it's the El Shaddoll fusion of Link summons! Letting you swing in with 1, then use Transcendence to swap it out for another to get 1 more attack. But it's also useful for dodging targeted interaction, or other tricks like waiting until the battle phase to Reincarnation summon Pyro Phoenix to avoid things like Nibiru. This is like the Swiss Army knife of cards, giving you a ton of different options, but none of them actually set up your game plan, so like a bunch of our other cards, this makes for a nifty one-up to get out in a sticky situation to really transcend your limits. Will of the Salamangreat is a continuous spell card, and during your main phase, you can special summon a Salamangreat monster from your hand or grave. Or you can send this face-up card from your field to the grave, then target a Salamangreat Link monster you control that was Link summoned using a monster with its same name as material to special summon Salamangreat monsters from your hand and or grave in defense position up to the number of that monster's Link rating. This is another mainstay of the theme that helps keep your resource game going strong. A card that revives a monster every turn is invaluable, especially with all the things any individual Salamangreat can do. But when it's time to really steamroll your opponent, you can trade it in for a huge amount of cards. Thankfully, the 2 effects are mutually exclusive, so you can't do both in the same turn, but it's more than powerful enough besides. Especially since, and I can't stress this enough, it is recyclable. Truly, if you find a Salamangreat will, there's a Salamangreat way. Salamangreat Claw is an equipped spell that can only be equipped to a Salamangreat monster. The equipped monster can't be destroyed by battle or card effect, and deals piercing battle damage. And if the equipped monster is a Salamangreat Link monster that was Link summoned using I'm just gonna say Reincarnation Summon from now on, during each battle phase, it can make attacks on monsters up to its Link rating. The on monsters part is very important, so don't expect to wipe the board with Pyro Phoenix then attack 4 times. In fact, its strengths lie more in its defensive capabilities than offensive ones, and you might have more success with running this if you use it to keep cards like Sunlight Wolf safe, with the option of putting it on cards like Raging Phoenix if the opportunity allows. That is, if you choose to play it at all, since equipped cards are known for being huge resource sinks. But a card that keeps your Advantage engine safe feels like a sound investment. But no matter what your opinion is, judging from the Leo artwork here, it's clear that this kitty has claws. Rising Fire is an equipped spell card that's always treated as a Salamangreat card. If you control no monsters, activate this card by targeting a fire monster in your grave. Special summon it and equip it with this card. The equipped monster gains 500 attack, and when this card leaves the field, destroy that monster. And if this card in your possession is destroyed by an opponent's card effect, you can banish a monster on the field. So we have a revival spell that boosts the attack of what we summon, and punishes your opponent for trying to remove it specifically with a monster banish. That's actually kinda raw. It's a shame it has that restriction where you have to have a blank monster lineup to use it. It even checks for in your possession, so if the activation gets negated and is then subsequently destroyed, you still get the retaliation effect. And because it summons fire monsters in general, you aren't locked to your own theme, though it is, once again, recyclable because it's a Salamangreat card. So even if your card economy is low, you can always count on this equip to add some rising action to the scene. Salamangreat Rage is a normal trap card that, when activated, has one of 2 effects. It either sends a Salamangreat monster from your hand or face-up field to the grave, then targets a card on the field and destroys it. Or targets a Salamangreat Link monster you control that was Reincarnation summoned and destroy cards your opponent controls up to that monster's Link rating. That is truly an absurd swing in power. Either it's a very inefficient removal trick, or is non-targeting removal of a bunch of cards on the field at no cost. Get a reincarnated Link 3 or 4 and this becomes an absolute nightmare to deal with, no 2 ways about it, especially with Falco resetting this turn after turn. Raging Phoenix had its time, but now I get to get mad. What is up with this card? Salamangreat Revive is a normal trap card that targets a fire monster in your grave and special summons it. You can also banish this card from your grave, then target a Salamangreat monster you control and a monster with the same name in your grave. Shuffle that monster from the grave into the deck, and if you do, that other monster you control gains attack equal to its own original attack until the end of the turn. Ooh, that's a tricky one. It effectively lets any of your monsters do the same trick as Raging Phoenix, doubling their attack power for a huge hit. And you can even spring this on your opponent opponent during the battle phase if you want to be cheeky about it. Though if your monster gets sufficiently big enough, the amount of time it has with that boost might not matter. And being a revival trap on top of all that to boot isn't bad either. I've gotta say, if anything is gonna revive the usage of Salamangreat, it's gonna be this card. Salamangreat Roar is a counter trap card, and when a spell card, trap card, or monster effect is activated while you control a Salamangreat Link monster, you negate the activation, and if you do, destroy that card. And while this card is in your grave, if a Salamangreat Link monster is reincarnation summoned, you can set this card, but banish it when it leaves the field. But these two effects are mutually exclusive, so no stacking both effects in the same turn. This is another big feather in the theme's hat, an Omni Negate at no cost that can reset itself in a pinch, though you can avoid it banishing itself by using a spell and trap recycler to get this back into rotation. In fact, getting this back online every turn is going to be your top priority once you've locked down your opponent to only a few cards. Your opponent might get frustrated, but you're in for a rip-roarin' good time. Salamangreat Gift is a continuous trap card, and it lets you discard a Salamangreat monster to send a Salamangreat monster from your deck to the grave, then draw a card. If you control a Salamangreat Link monster that was reincarnation summoned though, you can activate a different effect that discards a Salamangreat monster to just draw 2 cards. So you have the option of doing either one in case you need a Foolish Burial, but otherwise turns all of your on-theme monsters into Pot of Greed. That can be activated on both players' turns. These effects are also thankfully mutually exclusive, because I'd have no idea how to handle this if you could do both in the same turn. The problem is, and I can't believe I'm saying this about a card that draws you so much, is that it's just not impactful enough. Sure, as a continuous card you can keep doing this over and over again, but is pretty slow, taking a few turns to really get you a big impact, and can be stopped with any kind of removal that works on back row. But, you know, make sure to tell Falco and Mir that we use it a lot. It'd be rude to throw away their gift like this. Alright, that's all the cards. Now let me show you how you can get your board set up using only a single Gazelle. While it's only at 1, remember that we have 3 more copies of it thanks to Circle, 3 more copies on top of that thanks to Lady Debug, and then 3 more copies of that thanks to Signet Mining. It's even got a special trick where if you discard a Salamangreat monster as its discard cost and you search that Gazelle with it, once it resolves, you can trigger Gazelle's effect in hand to special summon it. So even though you had to discard a card, now you've gotten things started without even having to use your normal summon. Once Gazelle hits the board, send a Spinning to grave and revive it using its own effect, using them both to overlay into Mirage Stallia. Detach Spinny to special summon Jack Jaguar from your deck, then link Jaguar into Balinx, which will then get you Sanctuary. Go ahead and use that reincarnation summon to turn one Balinx into another, then use Jack Jaguar's effect in grave to shuffle back the first Balinx, summoning itself back. Now you can link Jaguar and the second Balinx into Sunlight Wolf. From this point you can link Sunlight Wolf and the Mirage Stalio into another Sunlight Wolf to activate its reincarnation effect, and from that one card, you've got Sanctuary live, a fully powered Sunlight Wolf, a Balinx in grave for protection, a Jack Jaguar that can recycle any of your monsters, and a Gazelle in grave ready to be recycled to use its effect again. And we accomplish that with a single card, as well as without using our normal summon if we utilized the Signet Mining trick. If we used Circle to search it, then we have a spell card in graveyard to recycle with Sunlight Wolf, and if you have a normal summon or extender left over that can summon to Sunlight Wolf's zone, you can get the Gazelle back in hand, safe and sound. Not to mention the variety of support spell and trap cards you could have drawn that'll keep your setup safe. Alright, so that's all the Salamangreat cards, but what do we do with them? Well, while we have quite a few cards that are no slouch in battle, our main game plan is to set up a number of cards that'll really gum up your opponent's lines of play so that we can outpace them over the course of several turns. So our main priority should be disruption and resource management, while using off-theme cards to handle the heavy lifting of ending the game. So what can we play to help them out? First off, I want to add in a card that isn't technically a Salamangreat, but might as well be. Decode Talker Heat Soul. Being able to draw extra cards is big for any theme, but gives us the opportunity to draw into more interaction and hand traps. Now, it might seem impossible for us to use it, since its requirements are Cyberse monsters of different attributes, but we can use a method that every Cyberse deck has been using to go into this card: Splash Mage. It only requires 2 Cyberse monsters, so any 2 Salamangreats will do, and if its revival effect gets you back a Salamangreat, well then you've got a water and a fire, so bing bang boom, that's Heat Soul. Enjoy your free cards and potentially swapping into a Link 3 or lower Cyberse when things get dicey. Another hilarious piece of support that I'm a huge fan of is 4-Mud Skipper. While you're not able to use it as the entire material for a Reincarnation Link summon, since Sanctuary specifies you have to use a Link monster for it, and that's not something 4-Mud copies, it can take on their name, so can enable a Reincarnation summon if used as material for a like-named Salamangreat. It also has the huge boon of searching us Parallel Exceed, an outstanding card for any Link deck, Cyberse included, giving us 2 free material to either Link climb with or make utility rank 4s. And with the release of these new cards, you can instead search Tiger, in case that ever becomes relevant. Since Salamangreats work so well with fire monsters in general, I think it's worth taking a look at a few of them, and the one that comes to mind immediately is Immortal Phoenix Gearfried. We actually have quite a few equip spells in a theme that we can use to fuel Gearfried's summon, and once you start equipping opposing monsters, you won't have to worry about feeding it. And for all that, we get a huge body with a monster negate that we can recycle with several of our effects. But if we don't want to use our own equip spells, we can incorporate the newly released Phoenix Gearblade. The attack boost isn't that much, but can give your entire field an additional, unrestricted attack, or recycles itself if used for Gearfried's negation or summon. Speaking of big ol' fire monsters, Blaster, Dragon Ruler of Infernos, just got unbanned, giving you some incidental removal and a giant body if need be. Not to mention that it pairs well with Weasel to make Barone. It's been mentioned a few times this video, but it bears repeating, this is probably the best deck that can run Ash Blossom, since you can recycle it a whole bunch with Sunlight Wolf. While Salamangreat Transcendence is our El Shaddai fusion, it's not the only quick play spell that can act as a funny little battle trick. Circle of the Fire Kings effectively swaps a monster on our field with one in our grave, so if we're looking for a free way to poke for extra damage, or just to swap out monsters to get the effects we need, this shouldn't be overlooked. Another group of cards worth mentioning again are our utility Link monsters. Update Jammer and Access Code Talker can be used to end basically any game, giving you a way to remove a bunch of cards from your opponent's field before attacking for lethal. Transcode Talker is also a strong option to revive our Link monsters out of the graveyard, while providing a huge boost and protection. IP Masquerena is, of course, an icon, giving you access to several cards on your opponent's turn, including Nightmare Unicorn. And if you want to play Violet Chimera but don't want to play bricky fusion spells, consider making room in your extra for Proxy F Magician, which not only gives you a free fusion effect, though it only uses monsters on your field. If you fusion summon to a zone this card points to, you can special summon a monster with 1,000 or less attack from your hand, so it kind of acts as an extender. As for a silly tech pick, well, we are a control theme, so that means we have to play dirty sometimes. We could play Floodgates, Goes and Match, and Rivalry both seem stupendous, but I'm gonna go out on a limb and suggest Barrier Statue of the Inferno. We've already shown that you don't necessarily need to use your normal summon for your setups, and this will keep your opponent from special summoning just about anything. It can be recycled with Sunlight Wolf or revived with Salamangreat Revive, and can now even be searched out with the new spell Bonfire. And that's all I have to say about Salamangreat. While the new cards weren't what everyone was expecting, I think there's a lot that invested pilots can sink their teeth into, and I'm curious to see what they come up with in the future. So keep that fire in your soul alive, because Salamangreat aren't done yet. If anything, this is the fuel that's here to give us one more big reincarnation summon, because this deck isn't just good, it's Salamangreat! But now, I want to hear what you all have to say. Are Salamangreat poised to ignite your passions, or have they yet to give you fuel, give you fire, give you that which you desire? And which one is your favorite? I've been a big fan of Spinny for a while, but Salamangreat of Fire is very quickly working its way into my heart. Let me know down in the comments, and if you haven't already, please make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and make sure to share this video with somebody you know who loves Yu-Gi-Oh! It really does a lot to help me out. Today's episode was brought to you in part by Dragon Shield. When you want to protect your cards with the power of dragon scales, get some sweet lore for them, and support the channel, check out my link in the description to get started. Today's episode was also brought to you by my lovely patrons, including this month's illustrious Quasar Commander Green Knight, Nebula Navigator's 3rd Dynasty, Ada Basilisk, Adam Zajdel, Andrew Newman, A Random Pup, Avi Chali, Kane Senpai, Chibi Gohan, Danny Bound, Divine Dragon Felgrand 4123, Eric, Aaron the World Breaker, Frankie, Genesis Yu-Gi-Oh, Gloomba 331, Great Big Pillock, Hairbear, Harry the Ominous Benefactor, Howling Zangetsu, Iskander 711, John, Jordan, Julius Sneezer, Mana Charge, Marluxia Zagirl, Nathan Vig, Panther J, Rebel King Lucifer, RJ the Jank Monarch, Sammy Haim, Sir Knight JCB, Skybuster Leo, Sophie, apparently, the Fresh Prince of Con Air, the Wizard Moose and Xander Wolfensberger, Cosmic Crusaders Almento 5010, Ariel Kersey, Bear Sharktopus Studios, Beluga Masta, Blue Gem, Chaz Ghost, Chris Kessler, Drachenwald, Emony, Eva Padilla, Herbal D, In the House Like Carpet, Inblink, Gesture Designs, Kale the Dragon, Carp, Kevon Public, King Scarlet Yugioh, Lord Whoop-de-Doo, Manga Pages, Marion James E. Picata, Matt Simmons, Mega Combi, Michael Shimabukuro, Nadia McCarthy, Nitromo, Ruxith Sarani, Shizuki Nijimura, Star-Lord 777, Stephen Williamson, The Legendary Raven, Tucker Ordorn and Zal Dureka, as well as the lovely Starlight Explorers you see on screen now. If you'd like to be a part of these credits, get my videos early, join in on the monthly custom card review stream, and, of course, support the channel, please consider checking out the link to my Patreon in the description or becoming a YouTube member. And if you want to see another episode about some feisty, fiery friends, check out this video I made covering volcanics. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. I haven't exactly done a great job at keeping up with the source material, which is why Moby has decided to stand directly in front of the screen right when I'm saying this part, my god.